We are live. Buongiorno, buon pomeriggio, and buonasera, wherever you are tuning in, Laziali and Calcio fans around the world. Thank you for joining us. Excited this evening for me to talk about the official statement, which is nice to say because it has been, like all things Lazio, a little bit to the point of getting a little nervy. But Sarri to Lazio is official. Excited to be joined by this group of guests to chat a little bit about that. We've got Marc, founder of the Lazio Toronto club, Bobby, Laziale in Miami. Bobby and I actually used to work together during our time in Major League Soccer. And then also excited to be joined by Art Morelli, the king of sarcasm and some of my favorite tweets on Twitter. So Art is going to be bringing us a little bit of that Napoli perspective here. So I want to start off. With you, Bobby, and we'll go around because you and I had a chance to kind of text about it. What were your initial reactions to the news that Sarri was going to Lazio?
I mean, I was excited. I think that for me, personally, obviously, I'm a bit of a Prem head too at the same time. So a little bit of a rivalry in that regard. But I think that he's a quality coach. I think that he's the best, for sure, the best one that's available. And more than anything today, I also think that the hockey guys, the first star of today is the media guy or gal for Lazio, with the announcement being just a cigarette. But I think that in all seriousness, he's going to bring a lot of confidence to the team. I think he's going to be defensively resilient, and I think that it was a great hire.
Yeah, Marc, your thoughts as a Laziale?
Yeah, well, one of the things you just took right out of my mouth was like, how about that official statement? Like, I'm one of the guys it's been like, I remember like a dozen years ago, we sent a letter to Lotito saying like, can we get stuff in order here? Can we have like official club status? Can we get a decent official Twitter? Like I speak Italian fluently, it's not a problem, but so many of my members don't, right? And it's like, ragazzi in inglese, like let's get into the next century. Like so that, but I will say, I'll give it to them. That was an amazing official tweet. As for Sarri, look, I was always a Inzaghi for life guy. I still, I'm not happy about the way he left, to be honest with you, but one of the reasons I was an Inzaghi for life guy is because I didn't think we'd get anybody who would be even remotely as good as Inzaghi. We may have actually got someone who's better than Inzaghi, frankly, right? So, and that's not a guy that I would have expected ever, because I know Lotito, right? 20 years, 25 years of Lazialidad. I know how it goes with, Lotito the last 17. He doesn't replace very well, right? It's usually, I was expecting the joke here in Toronto, Lazio Club Toronto was, we're going to get Iachini. So just prepare yourselves, right? So I'm thrilled with the decision. I think it's an important, bold statement. I'm sure we'll get to that anyway.
Yeah, look, before I let Art chime in, because I'm excited to hear his perspective, I kind of fall in line with you, Marc, because I was very excited but shocked. And we had an emergency pod when the news broke that Simone was signing with Inter. And we were talking about potential coaching candidates. And we kind of went in a circle to talk about who we thought was going to be the choice. And honestly, I was serious when I said it, and it was a very much a dark horse. But I thought Lotito was going to go back to his bag of what he thought worked with Simone. Typically he's not going to shell out the big bucks. I thought he might have thought, hey, a former player worked early in his career. I honestly thought he would go with Alessandro Nesta. Minimal coaching experience, has some, didn't want to necessarily go the route of Pirlo with none, so he could lean on the fact that Nesta had some experience both in the United States and in Italy, and then again, could probably come up on the cheap, maybe gets the fans excited because it's a former Lazio player. That is certainly the route I thought we were going. So for it to come out that it's Sarri, the best available manager, somebody that obviously I believe he's not going to come on without agreeing or getting some sort of agreement from Lotito that there's going to be investments. I absolutely thrilled, shocked. I was all in. I was I tweeted about it yesterday before it's official. I don't typically like to do that. That's how excited I was. And I was ready to get my heart broken at the same time. So part of me thought 50-50, this was going to be another David Silva from last season. Nice to see that, the positivity versus something drastically opposite happening. So you
were waiting for I respect the man, but not I respect the coach, but not the man tweet. We were waiting for one of those.
I mean, 100%. And it's nice to see it again. Such awful communication so many times. I mean, the Inzaghi press release, embarrassing for a man that's done so much for the club. Just flat out embarrassing, right? So it's nice to see for once because I bashed some of the marketing. We need to be better on that side, but it actually looked a little bit cohesive. It looked like there was a strategy behind it. And it was nice to see a video on Instagram and Twitter get posted, that was kind of fun. So kudos to the marketing team and Lazio for getting it right, for, some ambition for Lotito, doing his job. I honestly, he blew it with Simone, and there was only one man to fault in that situation. But we'll talk about it later, whether we think it's an upgrade, but well done to Lotito. But Art, you're sitting here as our Napoli guy, obviously a rival. I think we're kind of both in the same boat. We're neither one of us are in Champions League. Probably both feeling something about that, going into the season with a little bit higher expectations. What do you think as a rival of this move and Lazio getting Sarri?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Napoli fan first, obviously, but I'm a football fan and I'm a calcio fan. I'm a Serie A fan. I think having a character like Sarri and back in Serie A is great. It's amazing. I'm glad to have him back. I think it couldn't have worked out better for you guys. Just given the fact, if you sort of follow the dominoes, Conte abruptly leaves Inter, and you sort of had Inter fans running around wondering what they were going to happen, and it really couldn't have worked out better for them, because you bring in a guy who roughly has the same ideas. I think nobody's a comparable coach to Conte, but they sort of play the same formation. They have roughly the same ideas. They rely on the same kind of players. There's comparisons between Brozovic and SMS, et cetera. Like you have similar scenarios. And so couldn't have worked out better for Inter. Conte leaves abruptly. They just won a Scudetto. They have ambition. Right. And so then now Lazio's left holding the hot potato. What now? What do we do? And as you've been saying, like, this is one of the, I'm not sure if it's the best. I know we like superlatives, but like, I think one of the better Italian coaches available, if not the best available. And it couldn't have worked out better for you. At first, I was concerned, and we can talk about it more specifically later, like just the fit specifically. Completely different style of plays, completely different styles of play, I should say, completely different ideas on the pitch. And so, the transition, I think, will be, much harder for Lazio than it might be for Inter in terms of sort of managerial change. But I think you guys got to be excited and happy. I mean, this is the best case scenario. Yes, Simone. Look, and I know you, Mark. You mentioned yourself being sort of Simone for life guy. Like, look, especially modern football. Like, you got to turn the page eventually. Simone's been there for 4 years. You made Champions League. They took a step back. There's sort of an adage: it's sort of better to make a change a year early than it is a year too late. It might actually turn out to be a great thing for all parties involved. Inter gets a good coach, gets a good manager, and gets a reset. You guys get an opportunity here to sort of hit the reset button and start a new project. There's excitement, and so I think it's great. I think great signing. Yes, we're rivals, but I'm excited for Sarri. I want to see him succeed. I think he's a great Italian football character, and it's awesome.
Well, a couple things there. You mentioned just character. I mean, what a host of characters Serie A has for this season, and how about that Derby della Capitale? I mean, that's going to be something. Obviously, it always is, but this just brings a whole new level of just chaos, craziness. this has been a really interesting start to the offseason for Serie A. And I think ultimately a good thing because it'll bring eyes. We've already seen some of those international accounts that don't necessarily give the love to Serie A that we'd all like to see. Talk about it a little bit more than we're used to. So I think it's been a good thing already. Is this an upgrade, downgrade, or is Lazio essentially with this manager status quo to where they've been? Where do you see it?
I mean, all due respect to Simone, I mean, he's won a couple of Coppa Italias, but at this point, like, say what you want about the situation at Juventus, but Maurizio Sarri has won a Scudetto. He's won a European championship. I think he plays a modern, attractive style of football. I think it's an upgrade. I like Simone. I think he's a good manager, and I think he's going to be a good fit at Inter, and I think they'll continue to be successful there. But like, I think it's an upgrade for you, maybe a slight upgrade. I don't want to go too bullish on Sarri, but I think it's, given his pedigree, given the style of play that he plays, it's very modern and attractive looking football. He's won European tournaments. He's won a Scudetto. I think you have to accept that. I think you have to agree that this is an upgrade.
Yeah,
could I just throw something in for 1 second? So just to jump off that for 1 second and offer a bit of perspective. I mean, in fairness to Inzaghi, and I was an Inzaghi for life guy, but if you told me we would get, I don't know, I'll throw a name like just ridiculous. But if you told me we're going to get Simeone, like I'll drive Inzaghi wherever he needs to be the next day. That's fine. That's not realistic. But I didn't think we'd get Sarri. But just to give you an example, the last time we got a coach with this kind of pedigree coming in, a winner, a coach with this many trophies and this much success, you know what his name was? Sven-Göran Eriksson. That's the last time we got a coach who came in with the pedigree that Sarri or something like Sarri. So just to give you perspective,
yeah.
I mean, to me, and no offense to Sarri, no offense to Inzaghi, I loved Inzaghi, but I don't think it's too controversial to say that Sarri is definitely the more established, successful coach thus far. Now, he also has a lot more experience, which is, obviously something that goes a long way as well, right?
Yeah, and I think it's important to note too. Yes, he has more experience, but also the rosters he's had. Obviously, there's been a difference in talent to what Simone has had to have. And obviously, going to Sven-Göran Eriksson. I mean, that roster. I mean, right, like the investments made were tops in Europe at that time. Mm-hmm. Completely different playing field, and I think same for Sarri. And Sarri is able to get it done. After leaving Napoli, but obviously he was able to take that club. You guys had seen your best since the Maradona days under Sarri. So he can work some wonders. So Bobby, what do you stand? Upgrade, downgrade, status quo?
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too. Is that it's a bit of an upgrade. I mean, I there's no one that's gonna be able to convince me otherwise that prior to COVID that Simone would have had a Scudetto. But I mean, I think it's impossible. I mean, we can all be real here. It's certainly a bit of an upgrade for where it goes through. Like, obviously, we're all on the same page. It was a great, 4 or 5 seasons for what we had. We saw a lot of us. Like I said, that title challenge was as exciting as I've ever seen. But it's impossible to not be excited about where the club's going to end up going. And just based on the history from, the dude is a success in Serie A. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah, and I land the same way. So it's, I think we all are on the same page. It's an upgrade, but I don't want to get carried away, or I don't want to disrespect anything that Simone. And you bring up maybe the best point is pre-COVID. I mean, we were Scudetto challengers. I mean, this was the best Lazio squad that we have seen in 20 plus years, breaking all sorts of records, playing beautiful football.
I'd argue favorites.
So, yeah. Obviously something unprecedented kind of derailed that. And it was unfortunate to see Simone not necessarily make the adjustments that we wanted to see, but that's us kind of, armchair quarterbacking it a little bit. So, Mark, we know that in order for this to be successful, it can't just be a new manager, right? And I mentioned this. I think the piece that I'm excited about, and the thing that I didn't think that this would happen what I thought would cause this to not get pushed over the finish line was the lack of investments. I believe that this is just me projecting that this didn't happen without Lotito assuring Sarri that there were going to be some changes. Let's talk about what has to happen in order for Sarri to succeed. What does he need?
Well, I will say, look, to me, the thing that makes Sarri really exciting, really, really exciting as a manager is that in a certain way, I think, and maybe you'll get what I mean by this, he has the potential tactically to take the team in a direction that we all hoped that Simone would, but he didn't. And you're definitely being armchair quarterbacks here, but you heard it often about how sometimes, the 3-man D, he was so stubborn with it, and he never allowed the team never really, there was glimpses of it before the COVID where we won that 21 games in a row, but it was never, it always sort of stalled at times, especially since COVID, that sort of free-flowing attacking football that we were sort of used to, right? And so I think Sarri does something really interesting, and that is he really does offer that sort of progression to a set, because Sarri is known, the one thing Sarri is really, really well known for, I think because everybody remembers that Napoli that he coached, which was just like sparkling. What do they call it? Football champagne, just like that sparkling football, that, little touches, that vertical tiki-taka where he'd move the ball was constantly moving, opening spaces, and then bang, they'd strike and they'd score goals. They wouldn't just score a lot of goals that Napoli, they would score like the most gorgeous goals, right? Like that season. So I think he offers that. I think that's, in fairness, that's, so I don't want to say it's just a coach. I agree. He's going to need some pieces, but I do think, and that's the thing that made me sort of, Sarri wasn't even on my radar. When I heard about it, I was like, come on, right? Seriously, I wasn't even thinking about Sarri when Simone left. Then when they sort of brought his name up and they said, okay, this is a possibility. That's the thing that really struck me, was like, wow, I never even imagined that would be possible, that Sarri might come. But, when you start thinking about the type of football that he plays, it's, I think he's, in fairness, he's got a lot of really good pieces to start with at Lazio. Obviously there are going to be some things that, because that's the big debate that's been happening on the radios in Rome over the last 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days since Sarri's name came up. And, the big debate has been, is it going to be his usual 4-3-3? Although, in fairness, he does, that's sort of what he's known for, but he's just as likely to have played 4-3-2-1. And I think, 4-3-2-1. And I think that, 4-3-1-2. And I think that's where, I suspect that's where we're going to end up. Even if it's just because right now, that's the pieces that Lazio fits best, for the moment. But obviously there's going to be some problems, right? There's going to be some issues. Leva is older, not as fast. I am not sure that he's the same, type of player that, I don't know, who did he have at Napoli? Like a Hamzik or someone like that can really sort of, spring balls forward and move, I'm not sure he has that same type of creativity. But so that's going to, obviously be problematic. He's going to have to figure something out there. I think he's going to go with the 1-2 just because I don't think he's going to do away with Luis Alberto, right? I don't see that happening. I think Luis Alberto is fundamental. He also has a long-term contract. And I just don't see that kind of restructuring happening. I think that's my gut instinct. I could be wrong, who knows? But my gut instinct is it's going to be something like that, a 4-3-1-2. I know once my son found out that Sarri was coming, he went totally nuts because he's been complaining for 3 years now about this 3-man D. He couldn't stand it. So I think that's where there's going to have to be some changes. I think another CB is absolutely fundamental. I think probably Marusic will be a fullback from, going forward, but I don't see, maybe Radu can sort of fill in there, but I'm not sure it's going to be what he wants, right? As a starting player. And then the midfield, right? That's going to be fundamental. SMS obviously is going to be there. But who else is going to be there? I don't know about Lazzari. I think Fares is not going to fit properly. Morici, the less said, the better. And who's the other guy I'm thinking of? Cataldi. Unfortunately, I know he's a Laziale through and through, but I don't think, I don't see how Cataldi can fit in the system, to be totally honest with you. So there are some places. Pereira, I think Pereira is honestly, if they could work something out interesting, if they could work something interesting out with Manchester United to get him back, I think he's the kind of guy that Sarri could probably work with. And, he might be a really surprising sort of addition, non-addition addition, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
I think that's
million, but yeah,
not for 27 million. No way in hell. No.
Yeah. So I think you're right about the 4-3-1-2. And another name that I think, maybe our most important name when we're talking about a Sarri 4-3-3 is Ciro. And we've seen, obviously the difference in Ciro Immobile when he's playing a 4-3-3 with Yazzuri versus, when he's playing with a strike partner. And I think that's kind of the biggest piece right there. We know the midfield's going to need a little bit of an overhaul. We know there's some challenges with some of our wingers, but I think at the end of the day, Cheeto's not going anywhere, nor do we want to see him go anywhere. And so I think adopting that 1-2 system at the top is probably going to best suit him at the end of the day.
Look, man, if there's one, just to interrupt for 1 second, if there's one man in Rome who woke up in a hot sweat over this Sarri thing, it was Ciro Immobile. Like, he must be thinking, like, man, I've died and gone to heaven, because Sarri is, like, his style of play, I think, suits Ciro so well that if could you imagine Ciro playing on that Napoli team 4 or 5 years or whatever, 5 years or whatever it was? Like, think about that for a second. Like, this Ciro playing on that Napoli team. Could you imagine?
You obviously we're pretty tuned into that Napoli squad. How does Cheeto wake up in the morning? Is he excited about that? Do you see him kind of slotting in and having similar success to what Higuain saw? Obviously, Higuain, played spectacularly. So, thoughts on what Marc just said?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm interested to see how Ciro adapts to the system and how Sarri adapts to Ciro, because as you guys have been alluding to, like, Ciro has not had success in a front line that didn't include a second striker. At any stop along his career that I know of, as you guys were talking, I was thinking about, Torino, et cetera. But like, I don't remember him ever playing in a system that didn't have two men up front. So I'm interested to see that. I was initially concerned, like, that to me was the biggest concern. How do you get Ciro incorporated into that system? You mentioned a couple things about a couple comments that I want to sort of address, Marc. Yeah. You were sort of saying a couple of things. I feel like both Lazzari, in my mind, I feel like the kind of players that they are, Lazzari can work on the right wing and Correa can work on the left wing in a 4-3-3. I know that's obviously not Simone's system. That's not where they played, but I feel like both of those players can play on the wings. And so I can see that being a front three of Correa on the left, Lazzari on the right, and Ciro in the middle. The original question you asked, Shawn, is what do they need? I think they need fullbacks for sure. Fullbacks are integral to the Sarri system. I mean, Goulam, for example, was, I think, one of the best players in Serie A. They talk about the hockey assist. Like, he didn't put up a lot of numbers, but both him and Jorginho were both, I think, the sort of the first passers a lot of times out of the back. You talk about possession and progression and these vertical passes, diagonal passes. I mean, that was all Jorginho and Goulam when Sarriball was working really well. So I think you need fullbacks who are exciting going forward, but also don't give up anything on the back end. And so I think what they need is fullbacks. I think you got to figure out how to organize the midfield. I think you're not short on talent in the midfield. Like, SMS and Alberto are some of my favorite players in Serie A. Alberto is more of a mezzala than he is a regista. So it's like, and and SMS is more of a box to box than he is a holding midfielder. But I think both of them can do both.
Who plays that Jorginho role? You know, who do you see playing that role currently on Lazio's roster, or is that somebody that we need to bring in?
I think it could be SMS. Honestly, I think SMS can play the Jorginho role. He's just he's just a more active Jorginho, in my opinion. Like he has exceptional vision. Like he's good passing. He's comfortable passing the ball. I mean, what does he have? 1 billion assists? Like he's comfortable distributing the ball. He has great vision. And he runs like hell. And so, I mean, the difference between Jorginho is he's like more holding. He doesn't really move around. You look at a Jorginho heat map, it's like basically one set section of the pitch, and that's it. I think SMS gives you the sort of vision, and the connection that Jorginho gives you while also running around like a madman. So I think he could do that. I think Alberto kind of is I mean, he's kind of like a Zielinski type of player, like, and that's a guy that was successful in the Sarri system. Obviously, he came to Napoli because of Sarri. So I think you got the players. It's just like the big thing with Sarri is like, do players like want to adapt to the system? I think that was the biggest issue with Juventus and him leaving Juventus. In addition to him not being like really a company guy and not a Juventus guy, I think part of the problem was that like you had guys that had different ideas about what they wanted to do on the pitch, and they didn't want to like adapt to the mission. It was successful overall in the end, but at least in the league. But so I think you got the guys that can fit the roles that Sarri wants to fill. I think you probably don't have the fullbacks, and you definitely need some depth in the middle, in the back, because you want central defenders that can play high and distribute the ball, and then also at the same time not make mistakes.
And I think a big thing.
Glad. Go ahead, Bobby.
I was just going to say, I think a big thing too that SMS brings versus Jorginho is the fact that like, he always, regardless, first, like one touch, head up, wants to get the ball going forward and quickly get through the lines. Whereas Jorginho, whatever team that he was on with him, I think a lot of his desire is he'll take one look and then sideways, backwards, trying to just, he's not as active for me with trying to get the ball forward, whereas SMS wants to get it up and in the opposing half as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. He's SMS just has this brilliant balance of obviously his defensive awareness, but obviously the attacking prowess too. So, Art, you mentioned a player, and I'm happy you brought up Lazio, because I'm in the same boat as you, which it seems like early conversations, and then the quick assumption by everybody is Lazio is kind of one of the odd men out. Doesn't fit into the system. Seems like that's going to be a player that has to make a move. I think he can play on the wings. Not only that, but I'm not so quick to dismiss like that he can't be a right back. Am I crazy to think that?
I don't know. I don't know what his defensive skill set is. I feel like he has the offensive tools. I don't know what his defensive skill set is, and I don't know how much experience he has playing that position.
Yeah, so not a ton of experience, but Mark, I mean, look, we know one of the things early on, there was a lot of frustrations with Lazio. A lot of those frustrations were his inability to make the right decision in the final third, deliver an accurate ball. But one of the things that just you can never fault him for was just his effort level, his fight, his ability to track back. Like those are things that don't concern me at the right back position versus playing the wing. Like we know we need somebody to distribute the ball. We know we need somebody to deliver a nice ball into Cheetah. I probably have more questions. We saw him develop that a little bit better this year, but I'm in the camp of not being so quick to dismiss Lazio as being a player on this squad. What do you think, Bobby?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I mean, I look back at, some like, I always default back to like the Premier League as well. You look at someone like someone like an Ainsley Miles who didn't really necessarily have a position but was wanted by a bunch of different teams. And the biggest thing for him was going forward, to your point, like it was all heart, it was all effort of trying to be there. And more than anything was the willingness to try and just slot in wherever he wanted to still continue to keep playing for the club. So I think that if that's the mentality that he takes, I think that he'd be more than fine with being in the right back position.
I don't see it. I don't see it, guys. I'll be honest with you. I don't see it. I mean, I love Lazio. I think he's fantastic. I mean, a guy that outruns Alphonso Davies, like, are you kidding me? So,
I mean, he's got to have some use, right? I mean,
yes, but you know what? He's not rugged enough going back. He doesn't have he helps out in the back. He gets back. He does all the right things. There's no shortage of heart with that kid. And I'm hoping something that Sarri's able to figure out, right? I mean, part of it is you're a player, right? So I do think that part of the problem, by the way, is and this is a bit of knock. I'm not a big Prem head. I only watch Lazio. I don't even care to watch other Serie A teams. That's the way I am, right? Like, I mean, for me, if there's Lazio and everything else is pornography. So, the reality is, Lazio is great when there's 5 guys lined up. He's very narrow, so he doesn't have, and he's able to make that vertical run back and forth, right? I'm not sure how rugged he is. First of all, he's not rugged. Let's face it, he's not. He gets knocked around like a rag doll sometimes. He's not a very rugged guy. And I think that in a 4-3-3 where he has a little bit more field to have to deal with, I'm not sure he's that great going vertical. I mean, going horizontal across the field. Vertical, he's great, right? He push balls forward. He's, once he gets past, he starts running into space. He's fast as hell. I get it, but I don't know. I don't know.
Can he make a run to the back post?
Yeah, he can.
Because I look at Lazio and I see Callejon.
Yeah.
Anytime you think of Sarri and you try to sort of translate, right? That's what we've been talking about. Who plays the Jorginho role? Who plays the Zidane role? Who plays the central role? Like and so like I feel like he could be that. I feel like he could be that offensive player on
I think to me, I always liked Callejon. I mean, I always thought he was a great player. I think he's got a little bit more creativity with his feet than Lazio, and he scores. Like, that's the one knock we all have about Lazio is, man, he doesn't score. Like, he gets chances and you can see it's not for lack of trying, or he doesn't even believe in it. Like, he goes, there's so many times this year where he breaks in and then he looks for anybody. He's like, he's within 10 feet or 20 feet of the net. And you're like, shoot, just have a goal, man. Like, let's go, lad. And he doesn't. He looks for somebody, right? And that to me shows he doesn't believe in it, right? He doesn't believe in it himself. So, Callejon maybe, but he's faster than Callejon. But Callejon was a much more offensively effective player, in my opinion. That's my opinion.
Well, look, we made a lot of the comparisons. There's already been plenty of linked rumors about a Sarri wish list. A lot of players on that wish list connected to Napoli, former, current players. Hisan, Maximovic. You've got Politano now is being linked to Lazio. Obviously you know these players and you know them well. What should we feel about their ability to make impacts, and specifically with one like Politano, who I would be excited about? I mean, what's his situation? Is that at all realistic that an exit could take place?
No.
I think Politano. I think Politano is definitely no. The factor that you have to consider is, first of all, they paid $20 million for him last January. Spalletti is the manager now, and I think Politano knows Spalletti and has had success under Spalletti at Inter, and so I feel like Politano is a guy that probably Spalletti wants to have around. The other two, I mean, Maximovic, I think highly of. I think he's a sturdy. He's not durable, but when he's on the field, he's a reliable central defender. I think he's had a bit of an attitude problem. I think in part because he hasn't been playing as much as he'd like, and that's sort of every player, really, right? But I like Maximovic, and I think obviously he's he understands what Sarri wants to do, and he's played with Sarri, and so that would be a bonus for you. I think LC Husai is a union plumber, pipe fitter. I think I don't think he's a player that you want on your squad. I think that he's shown a little bit of grit the last couple of months under Gattuso, playing more regularly. I don't think that he offers anything offensively. He's made some pretty terrible defensive mistakes, and so I think he would be a liability for your squad. So, look, does Sarri want him? Sometimes it's about like a player feeling wanted and a manager wanting a player, and that change of scenery and a reconnection with a former manager like could be good for him. I don't rate him as a player, and I think he's actually pretty bad. And I think Napoli's fullback problem is a separate issue. Obviously, here we also have a fullback issue, and he's part of that problem. And so I wouldn't recommend that. I mean, they're both available. Maksimovic and Husai are available because they don't have their contracts expire on June 30th, and so they'll be available on freeze, and so they'll come cheap.
Which is a Lotito special. So
yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. So it fits that scenario. Former manager, cheap for Lotito. So that makes sense. I think hard no on Politano though. I think that would be a reach. It would probably be more expensive than Lotito would want to pay. And I think he fits Spalletti's system nicely with Napoli, and Spalletti. He's a player that Spalletti will probably want to keep.
Look, man, you don't even have to go that far with Politano. Politano is not coming, and I'll tell you why Politano is not coming. Even if a sheik bought our team, Politano's not coming. Politano said he cried when the transfer to Roma didn't go through. There is no way in hell.
Thank you.
There is no way in hell. And Politano's a great player. So I mean, on an objective level, he's a fantastic player, and I'd love to have a player like him that's not named Politano and is not him on our team any day of the week, twice on Sundays. It's all good. Politano's never coming to Lazio, because if he does, he won't be able to get on the field because the curva is just going to go absolutely nuts. Right. So I don't, it's not possible. As for guys that we could get, I mean, I agree with the sentiment on Maksimovic. I like him. I think he'd be nice next to Cherby. He's available. His salary will probably be big, but he's free, or fairly big by Lotito standards. But he's available. So that's wonderful. In terms of, I like Serie A guys. I don't like, I'm not one of these, like, for the sake of argument, these FIFA fans, who it's like, oh, let's go get this guy, let's go get Shaqiri, and I'm almost like, I don't know, man. Yeah, he was good there, but I don't know what he's going to do in Serie A. I like Serie A guys. I like Acerbi, type signings. I like Candreva. When we had Candreva, I like those signings. Guys that you sort of know what they can do in Serie A, and there's room for improvement. Fine, great. So to me, I mean, I like I don't know what the possibilities are in any of these things. And all of this is just...
Sorry to cut you off, but you listed guys that were really, really successful with us.
Yes.
You got to remember, we've got those Serie A type players that also don't work out, like a Fades. Right? Fades was that perfect guy that
100%
played in the same system, played in that position, Serie A experience, just obviously we know what he did this year, and he was along with Murici, two big fat turds. So just a little bit of a devil's advocate. Those Serie A players tend to do well, but oftentimes same. Like they're just
no. But I'll throw a name out. Nandes. I think Nandes from Cagliari would be great. And I don't know what his situation is. I've heard he might go to Inter, or I don't know what the situation is there. But there's a type of player that I think would do great. I think he's somewhere in the $20 to $25 million range, if I remember correctly. I know he's been linked to Torreira. That would be a great option as well. He does have Serie A experience. He's not really doing much at Atletico. So those are some options I think in the midfield that would really help us out. I know that Sarri wants Loftus-Cheek. I mean, don't know much about him, but I've heard good things. And maybe a guy like we were just saying, a guy that if he wants to come and wants to play with Sarri and wants the opportunity, right? And by the way, English players, I do find a lot of times the one thing I will say great about English players is they'll come and they're not so picky about, oh, well, I've never played that position. You know, Italians are a little like that sometimes, or it's like, oh, you know, they're a little more like, okay, just put me in and I'll I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to transform myself into what is needed. So.
Yeah, well, you mentioned a couple Premier League guys, and Bobby is our resident Prem head here. For those that don't know, Bobby also is unfortunately he's not doing himself any favors by being an Arsenal fan, but combined with a Lazio fan, we've got some trophies on the Lazio side, but it's been a little bit. You guys got your version of Coppa Italia, I guess, a couple years ago, but. As an Arsenal guy, you've got experience with a few of the linked players, Torea being one of them, Mavropanos another, and then we talked about a few other guys in the Prem that are linked. Obviously, Loftus being one. So thoughts of those groups of players, like who best suits you?
So I think Carrera would be perfect. I love him as a player as a whole. His engine is ridiculous. He's fearless in the midfield. Like, he stands 5'6", 5'7", something like that, but he plays like he's 6'5". Can take a pass, can get a goal out if he needs to. Not afraid to take a shot from outside if needed. I think that he would be great. I think that Mavropanos is another one that it would be. That's probably not a super familiar name for you guys, but. We signed him. He's a Greek he's a Greek under 21 international. But essentially, when he's an Arsene Wenger signing, and when Arsenal signed him within that first January transfer window, within 3 to 4 practices, he was set to go out on loan just to anywhere in the world that would take him to try and get in there. But he proved himself well enough to have Arsene Wenger have him stay. He's had a very good spell over at Stuttgart this year, and he's someone that I know that is potentially in Arteta's plans. But he's another one that I think that his vision at the back is very, very good. I think he's great in the air. I think he's super, super strong, and I think that both of them would suit well. And then it's similar to what Mark was saying. I think that Loftus-Cheek would be another one that's good, like having that same sort of connection with being in the Chelsea system, even if not for very long. With Sarri, like it would be, I think that's someone that would suit his system well.
So I want to go around and almost rapid fire. Just give me your one name player that sees a boost currently on Lazio's roster, sees a boost in performance with Sarri. We'll start with you, Mark.
There's so many. I'm kind of, to be honest with you, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to break your rule, but I'm gonna go between Immobile and SMS.
Okay. Art?
Just SMS probably just because of the margins for improvement that he has. He's just, so there you go.
Art, who you got?
Correa.
Okay. Which is, I'm glad you said that because our buddy here, Anthony Williams, asked both on Twitter and in the chat room here, is Correa more valuable as transfer bait for Lazio or more of a value for the club playing on the wing? What do you think, Art?
Well, I think he's valuable playing on the wing. I also think that, he could, in a world where, I agree with you all, Ciro Immobile is not going anywhere. But, I'm thinking about when Higuain left Napoli and Sarri was left with a hole in the middle. And Dries Mertens, was a superstar. That's how Dries Mertens became a superstar. He scored 34 goals in the middle playing that false nine role. And I think that Correa is not really, he can play on the wing. I think he's played, I think you guys are the Lazio experts. I think he's primarily played second striker next to Ciro. Mm-hmm. But he is the perfect kind of false nine player, I think. And so again, I thought a lot about what kind of message I want to send here, sitting here with you guys today. And the angle that I've taken is trying to draw comparisons to the Sarri teams that I know. And And I think that Correa is a guy that can score 20 plus goals in a maybe 30 goals in a Sarri system if he was given a start in the middle there. And so obviously that's not going to happen, especially with Chiro there. But I think Correa is a name that I think could really be awesome.
It's an interesting one, and Correa is such a fascinating and frustrating as a Lazio fan, because there are moments of just world class from him. I mean, his dribbling, his vision, the ability to just escape tight spaces, second to none. However, you talked about Dries Mertens racking up 34 goals. It is hard to envision that from a Correa, who just oftentimes his finishing touch just lacking. And he had a little spurt this year where he ended up scoring 4 goals in 3 games, 2 games, where he came to life, but then he kind of trails off again and goes back to just invisible. Just a frustrating player because he has the talent. So I would be curious to see if, given the opportunities with Asadi, if he could become a player anywhere near Dries Mertens. Bobby, who is your pick for player currently on Lazio's roster that has the most to gain with Sarri coming in?
I think for me, it's going to be Immobile. Like, I think that the idea that he's going to have more chances created for him, and he's not going to necessarily have to put the team on his back, so to speak, and just come up with world-class goals week in and week out. I think that he's going to for sure benefit big time. But I think that Correa is a great shout too.
I'll let you kick off then on the opposite side of things. One player least suited for Sarri, this could either be the player that's most likely to leave, or player that if he stays, he's essentially gonna fail under this new system. Who do you got?
That's a hard one to say because, while I also think that it's one that we talked about a bit earlier. While I think that that Lazio has all the raw talent to be able to slot in at right back, I do question his toughness. I do question that if he is the last line of defense, how reliable he can be. Now, that's not to say that I don't think that he could potentially do it, but gun to my head, who it's going to be. If Lasserie is forced into that sort of position, it just really is hard to see him, being the one to actually come through.
Yeah. Mark?
I would agree with the Lazio scenario. I mean, if you really want to go, Lazio is the big name that everybody, we love him. I love Lazio. I think he did great. I really enjoyed watching him this season, but I don't know. He's the one I think that unfortunately, because of how well he did this year and how sort of, under Inzaghi, he was growing. You could see he was growing through the season. He was improving his play. He was really sort of growing into his own under the Inzaghi system, but I don't see it working. I mean, Fares, I think, is done. I mean, Cataldi is done. I just don't see it happening. Cataldi is just not strong enough to play in a Sarri team. Yeah. He doesn't even have the technical ability to do it, right? Murici, forget it. The Murici obviously is, I'm not even going to mention him because, I don't care who's their coach is. I want Murici to leave, right? So let's leave those aside. But I think Lazio's the big name. The other guy you could probably mention we haven't talked too much about is the goalie. And I think this is bad news for Strakosha because, I can't even pronounce his name. The guy who played for Chelsea, who Sarri went out and got.
Kepa?
No, the other guy. The guy who's really good with his feet. I can't remember his name for the life of me. Anyway, the point is, I think this might not be good for Strakosha because Sarri uses the goalie really, really well. He likes goalies that are good with their feet. Reina played with him before. He, even at Chelsea, I forgot the guy's name, but he wasn't necessarily a shot stopper. Strakosha is a phenomenal shot stopper, excuse me. And, just like this year we saw with Reina, who isn't as good a shot stopper as Strakosha, but played the majority of the games simply because he's really good at quick redistribution with his feet. And I think Sarri likes that. His teams always have that. And Reina, of course, was there for several of the years that he had that success at Napoli, right? And I remember that was the knock on Napoli, right? Was that Reina's fantastic at redistributing the ball, but he's going to let in a bad goal every once in a while, right? That was the big knock, right? In fact, I can remember a couple of the goals that we scored against him. I can clearly remember one by Candreva that went in on the short side, right? And we were all like, thank God for Reina. But I think Reina, Strakosha's, I don't know. I don't think this is a good thing for Strakosha. I think it's going to be more of Reina than a Strakosha this year. So that's another guy I think is.
Point. That's a fantastic point, and we kind of overlooked that position here, but absolutely spot on. If anything, all things positive about bringing Sarri in. Maybe the one knock would be having to continue with Reina as our top keeper. I don't like him back there because I just feel his inability to shot stop greatly outweighs him being able to distribute the ball. At the end of the day, it is a goalkeeping position, and primary duty number one is to stop the ball from going into the net. So he just gets beat far too often for my liking. So Strakosha, again, probably was on his way out anyways with Inzaghi. So we'll see. But who do you have as the one guy maybe on our roster that this isn't great for?
Yeah, I'm gonna take a little creative license. I don't know that I have a very specific name. I do think that I'm curious to see about the back line. I think transitioning from and I know that we talked about the possibility of bringing in a guy like Maksimovic, who has familiarity with the manager and has played in a back four system. But I've seen historically that transitions from 3 at the back to 4 at the back and 4 at the back to 3 at the back takes time. A good example would be Spalletti's Inter playing 4 at the back to Conte. I mean, Milan Skriniar is one of the best Serie A defenders, and he didn't look like that. He had a wonderful bounce back year because, as I said, I think it takes time. But he looked bad at times last year in his first year with the back 3 under Conte. And I think anytime you sort of make that transition, I think that there are growing pains there. And, you can debate what Sarri's front formation is going to look like, whether it's 4-3-3 or sort of a modified 4-3-3 with a 4-2, whatever. But I think he's definitely going to play with a back 4. He's definitely going to have 2 center backs and 2 fullbacks. And I think that transition is going to probably be the most difficult because he needs, that system relies on starting from the back, and you need sound ball distributors that are going to go forward and play sound defense. And I worry about that going from a 3 at the back to a 4 at the back. So I don't have a specific player that I think won't necessarily be successful in the Sarri system, but I do think that in addition to the goalkeeper being a good shout, because I would worry about Reina as well. Yes, he's good going vertical with the ball, and that's what Sarri's system needs. But I would say the 4 at the back, the 2 center backs, I think that's going to be the most challenging transition for you guys. Otherwise, I think you have enough talent up front to figure out the rest of the Sarri system.
Yeah, and my choice would probably be a Lucas Leiva, honestly, and I don't know if it entirely. He probably was going to be my pick regardless, just because I see his decline. I see his decline in age. I see his inability to put up a full 90 in back-to-back matches. I don't know that he's going to just be able to keep up with this pace that we need to be playing. There's a lot of the movements that Sarri requires. He's certainly a question mark. He's been such a vital player for us, but his strength came in picking up other people's mistakes, and I just don't see enough quality. Particularly, Art, you mentioned the back line. It's got to get improved greatly, and I don't think Leiva is that quality anymore to kind of pick up everybody else's mistakes anymore. So he'd be my question mark. So. Going into next season, obviously super early, a lot has to change. I'll preface it by saying that. But how do you, as a Napoli fan, how are you viewing Napoli going into next season and kind of starting off this offseason? Again, we don't know what the roster is going to completely look like. But what do you look at us as kind of going into this season?
Lazio, you mean?
Yeah.
I think you're just going to need a little patience. I think. Look, your team. You are not. I love this job for Sarri primarily because it's not a super high profile job, and that's no knock on Lazio. I think Lazio in a lot of ways is sort of on a similar plane in terms of tiers of quality overall of just club in general. I mean, you're an important club in Italy. You play in the capital. You've won a Scudetto within the last 20 years. Like you're an important club. Probably like the sixth largest fan base, and you're splitting it.
So we're part of that group.
It's an important enough job, but it's not high enough profile where he's got added pressure to like be successful right away. I mean, Lazio made it to the Champions League last year for the first time, in 12 years or however long, like the group stage, I should say. So I believe that you should be patient, and he will get the patience because of sort of the expectations. Could you be a top 4 club? I don't know. Maybe if it all clicks right away, right? You're not too far off to begin with. It could click, and you could be there. But I just think you got to give him patience. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm actually wearing. I had to dig this up. It looks pretty gnarly, but this is the 2015-16 shirt. So I'm wearing the first Sarri, or at least the third jersey of the first Sarri season. They looked bad the first couple of matches, if I remember correctly, and it sort of everybody was like, "Well, wait a minute, you bring in this weird coach, and now all of a sudden he's like, it's a slow start." So I think you got to give it time. You got to let him adapt to the players. I think that one thing that I give him credit for, before he left Napoli, everybody said Sarri, the system, if you can't play the system, if he can't get you to play the system, he won't be successful. I give him a lot of credit because he did a lot to adapt. Obviously, he had Jorginho at Chelsea, and so that sort of helped with the adaptation there. But he did a lot to adapt to the style of those big top tier clubs, both at Chelsea and at Juventus. So I expect him to do a little bit more adapting to your talent, the already existing talent, than sort of demanding that they play his style. So if you give him a little patience and allow that adaptation to take place, I think you can be back in the top 4 for sure. If it maybe not this year, but definitely in the years to come. You just got to give him patience and let him get his pieces in place to sort of make it all work, make the machine work.
Bobby, where are you? Where's your head at as a Laziale? What are your hopes and dreams going into this season with this new manager?
If we can somehow find a way to get back to like Europa this year in the first year, I will be over the moon with it. Anything more than that, like if we somehow find our way into the top 4, I don't necessarily see it happening. I hope I'm wrong. I'll be dreaming. But I think that, it's tough seeing a new manager come in just in general, but knowing the amount of work that the squad needs and knowing that it's going to be a completely different new system, it's going to take time. So I think that would be my target for this year.
Mark, what about you?
Well, I will say, Art, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the way that people do, the way the Romans react to things. He ain't getting any patience. I can tell you that just from regularly listening to the 2 or 3 stations from Rome every day. We've already reached crazy town in terms of the discussion. Like, I'll give you an example. There's already some discussion of, and I'm not kidding, do you think that we could get Napoli to part with Insigne and dangle Correa? All right. Now, that's not totally insane in the sense that I'm not sure Insigne is going to stay at Napoli because there are some issues there, right, in terms of his contract. And apparently the last time didn't go well with ADL, right? You guys are familiar with having an owner that's a bit of a nutcase, right? So you know how things go. But that's where we're at, right? And so the conversation is right off the rails since, the whole Sarri's name came up. But I do think, look, I do think that as much as we want to compare Sarri to the Sarri at Napoli, he has grown a lot as a coach, a lot, right? So a lot of the conversation that we're having about what players would play and how they would play and whether they would fit in the system and all that, right? Depends on, I think people are still stuck on this. He's going to play 4-3-3. I don't think he is. I honestly do not think he is. I think that given the system, the team that we have on paper, and given the most natural sort of movement away from the sort of Inzaghi towards a Sarri style system, is probably going to be 4-3-1-2, I think. Which means, Correa will probably play next to Immobile. I hope he keeps, Caicedo, just because, we love Caicedo. So, right, like, who's going to save us in the 93rd minute, right? It's got to be him. So, as with how we're going to do, I mean, I think if everything stays the same, probably roughly where we are right now, more or less, with Sarri. If there are some interesting moves and we bring in some players and upgrade a few spots, like if you get a Nandez or a Loftus-Cheek, and suddenly you get, maybe you get another fullback. If you get Maksimovic, then things could get a little bit interesting, right? Not necessarily for challenging for a top 2 spot, but that 4th spot suddenly, we almost got there this year, and it wasn't really pretty, and we really and yet we were almost there at the end of the season with 5 games left. Could have gone either way, right? Like, the loss to Napoli for me sort of put us out of contention a bit, but really all of it depends on what happens with the Mercato, right? But right now, probably around the same area if nothing changes. That's my opinion.
Out of curiosity, you guys have been talking a lot about the 4-3-1-2 formation. What is your vision for the middle 4 then? Is it Alberto right behind the strikers?
Yeah, that's what I would say.
And then who are the 3 in the middle? And obviously, if it's not a guy already on the roster, you can. I mean,
it's gonna if it's 3 in the middle, it's gonna be your SMS, Lucas Leiva, and then it has to be somebody brought in, because I don't think the likes of Akpro is gonna do it. We've talked about he's not gonna do it. I mean, neither one of those guys are super physical. So yeah, it's got to be an incoming transfer. I think you at least have 2 out of the 3 right now. But for me, there's got to be a real quality player off the bench, because I don't see Lucas Leiva holding down a full 90 for
I wish Lotito wasn't so cheap, because I would love to see Manuel Locatelli play with Sarri.
Yeah.
That's where in that position too, though. I think that Torreira would be like a perfect signing to be able to come into. He just won the league with Atletico. Like, granted, he didn't play as much as he wanted to, but the best football of his entire life was played in Italy and played in Serie A. Like, he feels like it's as close to Uruguay as home can be. Like, he's very unsettled in London. He doesn't want to go back to Arsenal, as much as that hurts me to say. I think that would be a perfect signing for trying to make the system work.
I love him. I mean, he was rumored at Napoli for a couple of years, a couple of transfer markets, and I thought that was going to work out, and it never did. I like him. I like him as a player. Another name that I was thinking about coming into this conversation could be very cheap, and so I was thinking cheap. A guy that I like, that I've seen him play, you probably won't see it in the numbers. You kind of have to see him play, but he's at Regista playing at Spezia, Matteo Ricci. I think he might have got a little bit of run with the national team at some point, if not the big boys, the under 21. But he's an interesting player. I think he plays the Regista position well, and he's a guy that could come off the bench potentially with a bigger club, with a manager like Sarri that is going to be affordable. And I like what I've seen from him in the top flight with Spezia.
Well, I think we're going to see Sarri likely dip his toes into our academy a little bit more than Inzaghi did. I think we're going to have to just in terms of if we lose a Strakosha, just regulations require a certain amount of players from your academy being on the roster. I mean, that's our biggest one. I think we're going to see players like Raul Moro get more of an opportunity. He's kind of our young gem outside in the academy from Spain. He's one that I would be really intrigued to see play in Sarri's system. Potentially we see something from an Armeni young center back, but we'll see. But I think we are going to see him rely a little bit on some of these younger players. But we're gonna have to buy. Torreira would be my pick. right there in the midfield, because that's a gaping hole right off the bat. I mean, at every other position, I mean, yeah, our fullbacks need some help for sure. Like, we'll need that, but there's nobody that can remotely, I think, fit that third spot right now in the midfield. I see us in terms of where I think we'll be as a club is for this first season status quo, which would be a big, big win, given that the moment that Inzaghi left, this could have went a very, very different way. Could have seen us take 3 steps back as a club. So it's nice to at least feel good about us kind of remaining flat and building off of that. I'm very hopeful of what we can do. But at the end of the day, knowing that we're still reliant on the transfer market, Lotito being that guy, and Ilitari has missed a lot in most recent years, makes me a little bit nervous. So I'm hoping that Sarri has a little bit more say in some of those transfers. We'll see. But all in all, I can feel hopeful that we're not going backwards as a club, which is big. So, I appreciate you guys jumping on. This was really fun, especially having Art here from the Napoli side of things. Obviously super familiar with Sarri. It's going to be a fun Serie A season. I'm excited. We know we've got Euros to hold us over, so I'm really excited about that as well.
It's where we can all be friends.
Exactly. Exactly.
Actually, can I throw one more thing? Can I throw one more thing in? Because this erupted today. I don't know how many people were paying attention to it necessarily in North America, but like the Sarri news today in Rome got totally overshadowed, believe it or not. And you know what it got overshadowed by? Lotito went into Campidoglio, which is the city hall in Rome, and asked about Flaminio.
Yeah.
And like, I cannot describe the pandemonium that this created on the Roman stations. Like, all hell has broken loose. Like, Sarri, they weren't even talking about Sarri anymore, but the idea of Flaminio potentially being revitalized as the stadium, like, I was like, it was incredible. So that's a, like, if he does that, I'll tell you right now, like, whatever ill will people have had in Rome, like, because there's if you don't know this, there's Lotitiani, and then there's the anti-Lotitiani. There's a vicious civil war going on that's been going on for 18 years, 17 years now. But man, if he gets Flaminio, watch out. Like, it's going to be I
saw that, and I don't know, if that happens. Look, Simone leaving may have been the greatest thing for this club ever. It seems like maybe Lotito woke up a little bit angry, a little bit of a spark to try and prove something. We know he's probably a little is an understatement, but vindictive. For him to felt slighted in any way by Simone, whatever happened, I have no idea, but we know he can feel some way about it. It's just nice to see him react in a way that is positive for the club, that's ambitious, all things that maybe aren't used to describe Lotito. So, no. Yeah, I mean, we know, and this goes for every club in Serie A. That's been the challenge for most of the clubs, is not owning their own stadium. The revenue stream from that alone can change everything. That's where Juve has seen their separation from everybody else. So obviously, if a Flaminio happens, it's huge, absolutely huge, and it's a massive statement that's even part of a conversation right now, coming off the heels of Sarri news. So all good things for the fans. Yeah. So again, this was fun. Appreciate you guys jumping on. Calcio fans tuning in. Thank you. As always, sempre Forza Lazio.